Okay, I'm going to chat with you today about my experience painting for 20 days in a row with gouache on little pieces of paper. I have been sharing my daily process through little shorts here on YouTube as well as over on Instagram, daily posts for 20 days. So this challenge was not only about painting more, but also about being more active online and creating content every day for 20 days, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is for me because I was in kind of a routine of only posting once a week or every other week or just kind of scattered. And I'm also in the midst of moving, which you can't quite tell from this space because it's still intact, but it won't be in a couple days. Life is chaotic right now. I felt like I needed something, an anchor, and creativity for me is always my peaceful, happy place. So I thought, even though it sounds insane to do a 20-day challenge while I'm moving, it ended up being so good for me. Right now, this week is our craziest week, I think, probably this week and next week. We're moving the big stuff, like most of our stuff. So I'm glad that it's over, but leading up until now, it was so good to have something that I love doing to focus on every single morning. There were a couple days where I had to do it later in the day, but for the most part, my schedule or my strategy was to have coffee in the morning, then a little bit of breakfast, and then immediately come into the space and start painting. And I did a little bit of prep ahead of time to make things easier, which I'll talk about. But I think it was just that consistency, the accountability of knowing I'm going to post something every day. I'm self-employed and I can make my own schedule. And because of that, I sometimes prioritize other stuff, admin stuff, even life stuff over creativity, which this could be a whole separate topic, a whole separate video. As a full-time artist, you would think that all I do is paint all the time, and that could not be further from the truth. I wish that was my life. When things are crazy, when life gets crazy, when I'm busy, when I'm stressed, I don't allow myself personal time in the sketchbook because I think that I should be doing other things that are either making money or being productive. And especially like during a move, I'm like, oh, I should be packing boxes. Oh, I should be cleaning. Oh, I should be driving to the new place and prepping this and, doing all these things. And I easily push things that I love doing or should be doing for myself to the side, like being healthy, active, being artistic, all of these things. They just get brushed aside for the more important things. So this was not just a 20-day challenge. This was an attempt to save myself from going crazy during this busy, hectic time. And obviously, I just said I'm about to enter into the most hectic time of the move, and I really need to buckle down and focus on that. So I'm glad I don't have this daily challenge at the moment, but it was so good for me leading up to this. And anyway, let's talk about the challenge and let's talk about the art, what I learned, my supplies, and yeah, I will kind of show you clips from throughout the weeks. So it was just under 3 weeks for this challenge. 21 days would have been 3 weeks. One of the things I had decided right away is that I knew I wanted to keep my painting small, and I also wanted to give myself a time limit. Some people were like, why did you choose 20 days? That seems kind of like a random number. And it is a little bit, I guess, but it was the only reason I chose 20 days is because I wanted to use this paper. There are 20 sheets of paper in this little pad, so I've used it up. Oop. I was like, well, there's 20 sheets of paper. I'll just go with 20 days. Well, I'll just go to the end of this paper pad. And Every single day I got questions about that paper. So I'm putting the name of it on the screen. I'll put it in the description or whatever. I'll probably make a blog post to go along with this, so all the information will be on there. And I also knew I wanted to use gouache because it's just been, I've been in a gouache mood lately. It's been something that brings me so much joy. And I also loved this idea of creating 20 little originals. I don't know if I'm gonna sell them. I might release them as like a small collection after I move and settle into the new place and, you know, have some kind of stable life again. But for now, I just love having this small collection of little memories over the last couple weeks. So I mentioned that I did a little prep work, and that was to print out all of my reference photos ahead of time. And I got a lot of questions about this over the 3 weeks. So basically what I do is I go into Photoshop, I make an A4 document, and I just drop photos. Whatever's inspiring me in the moment, photos I've collected over the years. I've taken all of these photos myself, mostly in Scotland, and a lot of them are things I've painted before or little images that have just been kind of niggling at my mind, sticking in my mind for some reason that I'm like, oh, someday I'm going to paint that. So I keep a folder of those on my computer at all times. And it's easy to just pull from that and drop them into the page. And then once that page in the document is full, I just like shrink them down and kind of fit them all together. Once that's full, I print it out on my printer and then I cut them all out by hand. It's pretty simple. I don't have a fancy mini printer or anything like that. And they are stuck to the back of it with some sticky tack. I have talked about this many times in the past. When I'm overwhelmed, the last thing I want to do is rifle through my images on a computer and try to figure out what to paint. So having everything pre-printed in a pile on my desk meant that I could just get in here early, sit down, randomly choose one, and get started. So I'm so thankful I did that, because choice paralysis is definitely a problem. So usually I keep my supplies in a little bag somewhere near my desk, or I toss it on my little art cart over here. It gets messy and I'm always cleaning it and changing things out anyway, but that's just because I have limited space in here. But the main thing that I did was I kept my little mixing tray, my palette tray, and my gouache palette on my desk at all times or nearby, so that every day I knew exactly where everything was. I didn't always clean this off at the end of the session because I often like to use my dried colors as like grays for the next painting. And again, there will be a link in the description to a blog post with all of the names of the items I used and links to them if I have them, so that'll be easy for you to find. But I liked having just a small portable little setup in case I needed to push it away or move it one day and just like change my desk around, because I was doing other things during that 3 weeks as well. So having it at my desk at all times just made everything so much easier, along with my little pile of references. I also had my little Kaweco Sport, my little fountain pen. She's just so cute. And I was using Sketch Ink Carmine, which is orange, very intense orange ink, but when it's in the pen, it's a little bit less orange and leans more towards like orangey yellow. And actually it is waterproof, but you can dilute it before it dries and it becomes a very beautiful sunshine yellow. So I am loving this ink for drawing. It just is like a little bit more of a subtle color underneath a painting rather than black or something. I also have some green and blue inks that I sometimes play with, but this has been a fun one. And ever since I went to Spain, I've just loved oranges and yellows again. Like, I've never been a huge fan of them, but it just, I don't know, makes me happy. It reminds me of the sun. I miss the sun. I mentioned my little pad of paper here. I got this in Spain at a random pen store, actually, where I got my souvenir fountain pen. I talked about all this in my Spain recap video, which you can go watch if you want. But this just felt like the perfect size to do a daily challenge, because I know that I don't want anything too big, which will take too much time. Because not only was I doing the paintings, but I was also making daily videos and content from it. So my hope was that I could do the painting, I would give myself about 20 minutes for the painting, and then use the rest of that hour to edit, do all the rest of the stuff. I usually spent about an hour, sometimes it was up to an hour and a half. Like, as a quick review, I really liked it. It handled the watercolor beautifully. You can see some of them have some granulation showing. I was also able to work really thick and like use lots of layers of gouache on it without any issues. So yeah, overall it was just a very nice paper to work on. And I might even buy a couple more small ones like this for future projects. They make all different sizes, but I liked this one for the daily thing. As for brushes, I didn't really give myself any restrictions, but I mostly used my brush set that I made with Craftomo, so some of my bigger brushes. And then towards the end of the 20-day challenge, I was using my travel brush set. So these are my travel brushes that literally just came out yesterday as of now, at the time of recording this video. One of the good things about this size paper was that my travel brushes were kind of the perfect size for that. I don't really need a giant brush for something this size unless I want to make it extra hard challenge. But yeah, it was a lot of fun to use these. And then that helped me like kind of lead up to the launch of the travel brushes themselves. As a reminder, these are available now. They are limited again. These ones are a little bit different than the first edition we did. They're nickel free. And then we changed one of the designs of one of the brushes. Instead of a really skinny flat brush, it's a rigger brush. They come with this cute little travel pouch, which I was thinking would be the perfect size for one of these little pads of paper. So you'd have your little pad of paper, your travel brushes, maybe a portable painter or something, just like a little palette. And that could be like the travel kit, the to-go kit. I will probably test that out once it warms up a little bit outside. Of course, I have to do a lessons learned section of this video. And I'm looking at the first one right now compared to the last one. They're completely different subjects. First day, last day, and you can't really compare them directly because they're such different subjects. But I distinctly remember the feeling of painting this first one and feeling a little bit like a fish out of water, because at that time I had been going through a bit of a dry spell with my painting practice. I was just doing it very sporadically. Honestly, I was mostly painting just for Patreon tutorials and stuff like that, because I was coming back from all of my travels. Even though while I was traveling, I was also teaching an art retreat, which meant painting every day. It was a little bit different. So I wasn't painting for myself as much at that time. And like knowing that I would be doing this for 20 days straight, I remember sitting down for this first one and I was like, okay, I'm gonna keep this one really fast and really loose and energetic and just like try not to go overboard with it. So I think this first one actually took me maybe 15 minutes. And by the end of the month, some of these later ones, I definitely maximized my time. I was using gouache a little bit thicker in these later versions, and I was at least hitting the 20-minute mark, sometimes 25 minutes. And I remember feeling like it was easier to get into the flow about 10 days in, especially by the end. I just had like a strategy, sit down, quick sketch, first layer, let it dry or start working into that first layer, second layer, final touches. And I don't know, it was just so much easier by the end of the month. And I didn't feel quite as chaotic, which, you know, I'm sure that none of this was visible or perceivable from the outside. It probably just looked like every day I knew exactly what I was doing and everything went smoothly. But it's funny because when I sit down and paint, I never know exactly what's going to happen, what the results are going to be. I have a vague idea, I have a wish, I have a hope, I have a dream. What the thing I learned the most during a daily challenge, or at least painting a lot, is how to trust my decision-making skills or my instincts, because in a painting, you're just making probably hundreds, if not thousands, depending on the size of it, of little tiny decisions over and over again that lead to the final result. Especially early on in the painting, when you're making those first decisions, you are kind of taking a leap of faith sometimes and just hoping that it works out by the end of the painting. So sometimes I'll put like a big wash of color down and I'm like hoping that it'll work out, but I really have no idea. And of course, along the way, as you keep layering and the more experience you have, you can react to what's happening in the moment and you can make it work. And so you're like building your confidence slowly through all of those decisions and through that daily practice. And it just becomes more obvious when you do a daily practice as opposed to maybe like once a week or once a month or something like that. I hope this is making sense. Yeah. So by the end of the 20 days, I was feeling in the flow. I was trusting myself. I was trusting the process and the layering. And, you know, some people call it, I've called it the ugly phase. Most paintings go through an ugly phase at some point where it's the initial like wash or the initial layer, which is just like kind of muddy and messy. And it's like what happens, what it looks like before you get to the final touches, which start to define it. Yeah, you have to trust yourself and trust the process through the ugly phase. Just keep going. You're gonna make it work. At least that's what we tell ourselves. I was trying to think like which one is my favorite, which one did I enjoy the most. I think it might have been this one, which honestly is like kind of a crazy looking painting in the end. But the reason I like it is because of the feeling I had while painting it. I was very spontaneous with my decisions. I was like, sure, let's try water this color here, and then let's do a darker one here, and then a splash here, and just, I don't know, I was just very carefree and just like, yeah, let's see what happens. Which I do that a lot in my paintings, but especially in this one. And I actually liked the result, even though it's a bit crazy. And I think it's also because of the location. It's so stunning. Like any time I get turquoise water, waves crashing on rocks, I'm in a happy place. So this is probably one of my favorites. I also think these three are my favorites because of not only the colors, but also the memory of being in these locations and taking the photos and thinking someday I'm gonna paint that exact view. And each of these are a very special place in Scotland that mean a lot to me. And I just remember when I was painting each of these, I was in such a good mood because it just transports me back to the place. And also, I was having a lot of fun with colors in these. I was trying to think of which ones I found to be the most difficult, and it's probably one of these two. And that would mainly be because in this photo, there isn't any clear focus. So I had to sort of choose my focus, and I didn't really think about it till I was like halfway through the painting. Beginner mistake. And by the end, I chose to make like a clear path in the foreground, and that kind of helped. And I liked the result in the end. But I remember thinking, you know, huge lesson learned again, make sure you have a plan going into it. And then in this one, it was the sheep on the cliff by the coast. And about halfway through, I was like, I really don't want to do too many sheep because then it's going to feel very like cluttered in the foreground. And then I was so focused on the tiny little sheepies in the foreground that I sort of neglected the background. And by then it was a bit too late to go back, or not too late, but I was just like, okay, move on, lesson learned. But I love the teeny tiny little sheep in the very foreground. He's my favorite. I just want to like cut him out and just like have him somewhere near my desk. I thought it might be fun to figure out what was the most popular on social media just based on Instagram insights, which I get like in the dashboard. So if I look at the last 30 days, I can see what's my top viewed piece of content. And out of the 20-day challenge posts, any guesses which piece got the most attention? Drum roll, please. Da, 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 da. Yeah, the happy little autumn forest. My theory is that it's because I used some like neon colors in this one. This one got 10,538 views, which means the algorithm showed it to that many people. It doesn't necessarily mean they clicked on it, I don't think. The next closest was day 1. That might also be because this has been on my feed for the longest, you know, like it's had more time to gain views, because as I scroll down into the analytics, the least viewed is the most recent post. So it kind of makes sense in that way. So I don't really know what the point of looking at the statistics are in that sense, but if we look at interactions, that's a little bit different. This one got the most interactions, which means it was clicked on 8,577 times. It was either clicked on, liked, or commented on. And then from there, the next highest was, again, the first day. But the interesting thing about it, it was my post that I showed the under sketch with the little pen sitting next to it. And there were also other images of the finished piece in the carousel. But yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting that just the raw orange sketch of this got that much attention. So it just goes to show that people like seeing the process and not just the finished result. On YouTube, I can see the most popular content based on views in the last 28 days. So I'll only count the stuff that's in this challenge. Again, it was this one. So what's that saying? I think it means people like neon colors and bright, happy colors, and maybe forests too, but and the next most viewed was this one, which also has really bright, fun colors. Then there is a little shift. The next highest after those two were the dramatic stormy clouds, which I think could be related to the subject matter because that's like a thing people enjoy watching or painting. I won't go on and on about all of that, but it's just kind of fun to see like the initial results of that. Whatever it means, don't know. Another interesting stat to look at is I gained 929 new subscribers on YouTube over the last 28 days, most of those being during the 20-day challenge. And according to my stats, it says that's about the same as usual, whatever that means. So yeah. By the way, I am getting very close to 100,000 followers or subscribers, I guess, here on YouTube. Thank you very much for being here. Once I move and I'm more stable, I'll get back to regular posting and stuff. So I appreciate you being here, sticking with me, and enjoying whatever randomness I put out. YouTube does show you quite a lot of stats, but I never look at them, so I don't even know how to find. I had 52% new viewers this month, so that's probably due to the shorts. I had 100,000 more views, which is 95. I don't know if it's really in... Okay, I might be reading this wrong. Is anyone even interested in that? Who knows? But the real value, the real benefit of this kind of thing is personal growth, because I feel so inspired right now. I feel like if you gave me a reference photo of anything, I could just sit down and paint it. Or at least there's no hesitation to try because the act of sitting down, doing the sketch, you know, having my whole strategy of going through the layering process and all of that is so fresh in my mind. My next few days are going to be a bit crazy, so I probably won't be painting, but I am painting this coming weekend for my paint along over on Patreon. If you're interested, we are going to be painting waterfalls. Well, actually, it's going to be winter waterfalls, so like snowy, icy waterfalls. And Here's some waterfall action from my most recent stream with sketches and scrubs. If you haven't seen that, it was a lot of fun. We had a couple technical hiccups, but we got through it. We had good chat, good banter. I'll put a link to that stream below because, again, my schedule in the next few weeks, month, I don't even know when I'm going to have new internet at the new place, so bear with me. I will do my best to not completely disappear, but it's all for the best because we are moving to an amazing new place that we absolutely love, and we get to turn it into our fortress, our castle, our creative hub. And I will definitely be recording renovations and like showing you how I transformed the studio into my dream studio. There's a lot to share, but right now I just have to focus on moving, which is not very fun. So thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for joining me on this crazy adventure, and I don't know when I'll see you again, but hopefully soon. And I just hope you're all doing well and enjoy your holidays coming up. If you happen to get a set of the travel brushes, please do let me know, tag me on social media when they arrive, show me what you're painting. In addition, we do still have some of the gouache subscription boxes left. If you have been wanting to try to learn gouache and don't really know where to start, that's a really good option because you get the paint, the paper, all of your supplies delivered to you each month, plus the full-length step-by-step tutorial. And I show you my favorite techniques, how to use the brushes, mixing the paint, color theory, all of that stuff is included in the subscription. So it is definitely a good place to start. And now is a good time because we're about to go into the new year, and it just means you have a thing to look forward to each month to walk you through the basics and start the new year on a creative foot. So I'll put links to all that below. And yeah, I hope you enjoy. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I'll see you all hopefully very soon in our new house. All right, bye-bye.